Hey, everybody. Hey, Brad.
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
It's good to be in Utah.
Thank you for coming. Very quickly, if you could, for the audience, quickly explain the lawsuit that you've been involved in with the SEC for the last bunch of years.
So in December 2020, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission argued that Ripple's sales of XRP, a digital asset and a technology we use in our technology stack, that our sales of XRP represented the sale of an unregistered security. We, of course, argued, and frankly, I had never considered the possibility that XRP was a security. I always kind of looked at it as it's a currency. And we engaged in a 3.5-year legal battle that consummated last summer. We won on the kind of core issue that XRP is not in and of itself a security. That's a quote from the judge's ruling, which was great to win, but it was $150 million of legal bills along the way. Which we can talk more about the implications of that, but
yeah, and it carries on today, yes, in appeals? It
does carry on. I mean, the core matter has been resolved. There are a couple things that I'll call hangers-ons that the judge should rule on imminently. You know, a month, maybe less, or maybe 2 months. I can't know that, but I'm looking forward to closure and full resolution.
Yeah, so we're talking a lot about regulation, and thank you for that. We're talking a lot about regulation here at this event, and it has clearly dictated many of the last years of your life. Tell me a little bit about, you believe that regulation is needed for your business, but what kind, how we go about that, that's the nuance. So tell me where you need regulation and where you don't in this fast-growing still category.
Well, I'll tell you one interesting thing is I like to take interviews like this seriously. So as I prepared, I went and watched.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The last time I was on stage for Fortune Brainstorm was 5 years ago in Montauk. And not surprisingly, this exact same topic around regulatory dynamics came up. And one of the things I talked about was how important regulatory clarity was. And the frustrating thing as I sit here 5 years later is in some ways the world has changed a lot, and in some ways it has really not changed at all. And I think it's incumbent upon the United States government, which truly has fallen behind, right? Europe, you have more than 24 countries that have come together and created a framework for digital asset regulation called MiCA or MiCA, I don't know how to pronounce it. And the fact that they're way ahead of where the US is. And you have in this United States Securities and Exchange Commission a dynamic of putting really politics and power ahead of sound policy. And 5 years ago, I was saying we needed clarity, yet we still have the CFTC and the SEC and other parts of the US government arguing about how this should work. And when Gensler, the current chair of the SEC, came in, he went and hired more litigators. And instead of hiring people to actually codify and write policy, he went and hired more litigators. He goes in front of Congress and says, the rules are clear, we don't need new rules. But then we have federal judges ruling the opposite about the same. He's asked directly, is ETH a security? He won't answer the question.
So a lack of clarity is, kind of the sweeping topic for this whole category, and certainly for your business. And what I find fascinating about that is, you yourself you're a private startup, highly funded. Everybody wants to know when your exit is. Is there an IPO or there share buybacks? Like, your investors want to know where it ends. And you have no idea because of all this. Is that right?
That's definitely right. I mean, we have publicly said that we don't have any imminent plans to try and go public. I mean, why would you? You have in the current SEC, I mean, I'm not very popular inside the walls of the SEC. Look, there is clarity about XRP. The federal judge ruled that XRP is not a security. That is the law of the land. Only, sadly, Bitcoin and XRP have that clarity in the United States. And that's a travesty. I'm not saying that as in an excited way. I'm just saying that's a tragedy that it exists that way. Now, in terms of liquidity and those things, I mean, look, I've always viewed an IPO as a step in the journey, not the end of a journey. What we have done instead of, and this is actually new news that we haven't shared publicly, we have done a series of tender offers where we've been buying shares back from investors and employees. And we're in the middle of another tender offer. And after we finish this, we will have repurchased $1.4 billion of stock from our shareholders.
Wow, that's a huge amount. I want to switch topics just a little bit. Yesterday, we had Robinhood CEO, Vlad, and he was talking a great deal about real-world asset tokenization. That seems like a very large growth prospect for both your companies and especially yours. Tell me a little bit about that, because it's a very abstract concept for those of us who are, the normals.
Well, look, I think when we think about trading assets today, and you talk about securities, you talk about real estate, you talk about all these different things, there's friction associated with the movement and even the custody of those assets.
Yeah.
And the idea of if you can tokenize an asset and make it move the way a token moves on a blockchain, you can dramatically make those markets more efficient. Sure. And that's true in real estate. I mean, one of the things that Vlad said yesterday, I was in the audience yesterday, and I thought it was very powerful. He made the comment about how much his infrastructure costs to enable trading decrease between security settlement and crypto settlement.
Yeah.
And he actually said it was an order of magnitude cheaper because they can leverage public blockchains for the settlement.
Yeah.
And I think that people understandably get excited about crypto markets, and there's a lot of speculative dynamics. And I think we don't spend enough time talking about exactly what Vlad talked about.
Yeah.
Adoption of these technologies can dramatically reduce costs, improve efficiency, improve speed in the settlement of lots of different assets. Ripple started by focusing on the settlement of cross-border financial transactions, payments.
Right.
But you can, as you talk about the tokenization of different asset classes, now you have the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. They have $10 trillion of assets under management. He's one of the biggest advocates out there for crypto at large. He's made some really powerful comments that I think really speak to, and he used to be a naysayer and very dubious. And I think as he learned, he was like, oh wait, these technologies really can be used for real utility.
So no one knows what the state of the crypto market is like better than you. I would love, I would love your just kind of like 30,000 foot view, because it's so volatile, right? Every year, you got your boom, you got your bust. They're getting, the swings have changed since the early days. Where are we at right now?
Yeah. Well, look, I think this has been a profound year with the adoption of an approval. The U.S. SEC fought tooth and nail to not approve a Bitcoin ETF. They were forced by the court to do so in January. That went live, and again, billions of dollars of people who wanted exposure to this asset class moved in. Look, I think the long-term trends for crypto, whether it's because of inflationary dynamics, whether it's because of positive regulatory dynamics, the long-term trends for crypto, I think, are very positive. In some ways, it's taken longer to play out than I would have forecasted 10 years ago when I got in the industry. And in some ways, it's actually it's larger than I might have forecasted, right? You're talking about somewhere around $2.5 trillion is the total market.
It's extraordinary.
And look, I have said publicly before, to much criticism, there's something like 15,000 tokens. I don't know that the world needs 15,000 tokens. But there is a segment, a category of there will be multiple winners here. That different chains are more efficient for different use cases, and that's normal and to be expected.
Yeah.
I think that the U.S. as the largest economy in the world eventually will get this right. Eventually, we will have a different chair of the SEC who is not fighting the very laws that he is championing. Look, one of the things that he and I were talking about backstage, I'll just share with you. The United States SEC literally puts people in jail for not providing accurate transparency. Yet we have in this SEC a reluctance to provide transparency. They won't respond to Freedom of Information Act requests. They have been sanctioned by a judge here in Utah about a case where their prosecutors lied to the court. It's really depressing when you peel the onion back to see how this SEC, they're supposed to be working for us, the people, and it's so frustrating. But back to your core question, this will be a speed bump. 5 years from now, we'll look back, and Gary Gensler will be in the rearview mirror, and the markets will continue to grow. There'll be more successful use cases and technologies. And look, who could have predicted some of the use cases of the IP networks? As we sit here today, and you and I have been involved in this industry the internet industry a long time, you could not have predicted some of the use cases.
That's right.
The same thing will happen with blockchain. You cannot predict. If you move the marginal cost of a payment to zero, it will surprise you how payments will be unlocked. I'll give you one little tiny example that people talk about. Why do we get paid every 2 weeks in the United States? It's because of the friction of running payroll from 50 years ago. People don't run a check run every day. Well, why don't we pay people every day? And what would happen if we paid people every day? Well, then you could pay your credit card every day or your mortgage every day. And that would change the dynamics and cost of mortgages. And how would that actually change how often you pay your mortgage instead of once a month? And my point in saying all this is you can't imagine how some of these dynamics will unlock 10 years from now. And if you and I are on the stage in 10 years, we'll be talking about things that we can't predict. And that's why I'm so bullish about the future of crypto.
Yeah, you're welcome back. I don't know if I look forward to paying my mortgage every day, but it's a compelling vision. I'm going to come to the audience for questions in just a moment, but I have one more for you. So Ripple has announced that stablecoin. Tell us how that fits into the landscape that you've just painted.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the criticisms people have of crypto is their product market fit. Like, what problem is it solving?
Right.
And one of the fits clearly has been stablecoins. The largest stablecoin today is Tether. It has about $120 billion market cap. The second largest is USDC, which is Circle's stablecoin. And many people predict this market is going to grow exponentially from here. I think analysts think it'll be somewhere around $2 to $3 trillion in a handful of years. I think there's going to be multiple players in that space also. Ripple is entering this space. We already use stablecoins in our payment flows for some customers, depending upon the currency pair, the corridors where we're enabling payments for our customers. And so we're already using USDT in some cases, USDC in other cases, and we think it only makes sense for Ripple to be in this market also as a trusted, very compliant-centric, compliance-first modality. And so we've announced our entry into the market. We haven't gone live yet. We hope to into Q3 or thereabouts.
Yeah, right on. All right, let's go for questions. Questions? Anyone for Brad? Oh, the caffeine hasn't kicked in yet, has it? No. All right, well, I've got another one for you, sir. We're going to go back to the regulation thing a little bit. We're talking a lot about the U.S. election right now, right? The RNC is on. J.D. Vance was just a named VP pick last night. We had a great U.S.-China policy session yesterday. What is the outlook for you, depending on who's in the Oval Office?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, so I'm going to start by saying, look, I'm going to start by saying it's shocking to me as a kid who grew up in Kansas that somehow a technology like this has become a partisan issue. Uh-huh. Why would we have a Republican versus Democrat dynamic around innovation? Like, we should want technology that reduces cost, improves efficiency. The fact that this became partisan, I think really, the patient zero on that is Elizabeth Warren, who uses as a campaign talking point that all crypto is used for bad acts and et cetera, which is absolutely provably not the case. But now you have, in a somewhat crazy way, a dynamic where the Republicans are pro-crypto and a bunch of Democrats are anti-crypto. Mm-hmm. I'll give credit to a Fortune reporter who's one of the first people I saw tweet out, this is JJR, Jeff John Roberts, tweeted out that Biden will gain 0 votes for being anti-crypto, and Trump will gain tens of thousands, I don't know what he said exactly, but many votes for being pro-crypto. Mm-hmm. I agree with that tweet. And it makes no sense to me. And there are leading Democrats who I think are trying to solve this and leading in. I was at a crypto roundtable in Washington, D.C., led by a California rep named Ro Khanna, Mark Cuban. It was about 25 people. Anita Dunn, in a personal capacity, who works directly for Joe Biden, was in the group, as was Mark Cuban, the senator from New York, Gillibrand. So look, I think there's some leading Democrats recognizing that maybe got this wrong. I was sitting next to a different representative, who I'll leave unnamed, who said that he was there largely to do a mea culpa. Mm-hmm. He's like, I got this wrong, and I had looked at this the wrong way. And I do think it's because people believe the bullshit. Yeah. They have people espousing things that just are plainly not true, and they believe it, and they have to learn for themselves how crypto is really being used. There's a lot of very good actors in this space that are trying to follow the rules of the road, and we've been asking for 5 years, give us clear rules of the road. Yeah. And so I'm hopeful that eventually this will become a nonpartisan issue, but right now it is partisan, and I think the Republicans are playing chess where the Democrats are playing checkers. Right.
We talk about where the rules of the road. You can't wait for, clearly you're still waiting years later for these rules to be established. So where does the road go in the meantime for the category, not just for your company? What does the adoption curve look like for the business that you're in? What are the growth prospects? I know you're doing lots of international work. Just how are you looking at that given the lack of clarity everywhere else?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked this question. When the United States government sues you, it's a scary time.
Yep.
And we're a U.S. company based largely in San Francisco at the time. And I was very nervous about what the future of Ripple would hold and what the growth prospects. And I will tell you, one of the things, also maybe we didn't talk about publicly at the time, but we had really high turnover of employees that first few months, because I think a lot of employees were like, whoa,
freaked out.
I'm out. It ended up being that the 2 years after we got sued were record years for Ripple because we just went outside the United States. The products we're selling, the solutions we're enabling are very global. And if you look at our business now, 95% of our customers are non-US. From a payment volume, it's largely non-US. And that's sad. Actually, even as you kind of alluded to this, we made a strategic and conscious decision that about 75% of our hiring over the last 2 years has been non-US.
Yeah.
Why do you want to hire people here when your market is not here? You want to be closer to your customer. You've heard a lot about customer centricity in the panels and discussions over the last day and a half or day. And that's sad to me that we're offering high-paying jobs and we're doing a lot less hiring in the United States. We've still grown in the U.S., but again, when 75% of your hiring is non-U.S., that's a sad reality. So what you do when that happens, when you don't have clarity, is you go to where there is clarity.
Right.
And you have markets like Japan, you have markets like the Middle East, UAE, Dubai, Singapore. I highlighted the European Union earlier, certainly the UK. These are not random small countries and markets. And the U.S. has just been way behind on this, and I do think the United States Securities and Exchange Commission could be a leader in solving this. And instead, they're going to. I think the history books will look at this SEC administration as being Luddites.
Yeah. One more question for you. We talked about international and everything else. So my understanding of your business is that you're really competing with the SWIFT network overseas. And there's a lot of companies working with the SWIFT network, like AirWallex and things like that. So what does that playing field look like for you? Are you, in fact, in direct competition in these places? Is it not quite that way? Just how are you looking at that?
Yeah. So the SWIFT network, I imagine everyone here at some point in your lives has done a SWIFT-enabled transaction. You call it a wire transfer. One little side note, the expression wire transfer, the etymology of that is a telegram wire.
That's right.
This is not technology that has moved with the internet and advancement of these technologies. Do we compete with SWIFT? Yes. There are a lot of payment networks out there. And when I think about at the core what Ripple's trying to do, we're trying to let value move the way information moves today. What does that mean? You and I have been around for a while, these technologies. I was around, I had a Prodigy account, I had an AOL account, there's also CompuServe. You couldn't email between CompuServe and AOL.
Right.
That was not possible.
Right.
And then you had technologies, in this case SMTP, come along to enable interoperability between networks that didn't speak to each other. Mm-hmm. Today we have payment networks that are the same as CompuServe, Prodigy, and AOL. You can't readily send a Visa payment to your mother-in-law in India on Mother's Day. You can't send that payment directly. That is ripe with friction, and the cost to do that would be outrageous, and the likelihood of errors is crazy. But yet it's all ones and zeros. It's all why can't we enable interoperability between payment networks? And so when I think about SWIFT, when I think about an ACH network, when I think about SEPA, which is the European local payment network, you have SPAY in Mexico, Ripple views a world where all of this is interoperable. People say, well, PayPal and Venmo, they don't talk to each other. They're owned by the same company, and they don't speak to each other.
Right.
So I think eventually we will get there, but because these are payment networks, we need to move slowly and make sure it is regulatorily compliant. But I think that these unlocks will really unlock a lot of value for society.
Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right.